If you didn't get you a glass of wine beforehand, please do that so you can be comfortable. You can get into the flow of the conversation. Okay, so with that, we're going to begin our town hall meeting to talk about harnessing the power of Black women to transform America, which is what we have really always done since we've been here in this country. I'm Stephanie Brown James, co-founder of the Collective PAC. And to start off our conversation, we're going to start with a wonderful video by our primary partner of this afternoon's event, Move On. So if we can please play the video for Move On, please. Thank you.
Well, children, where there is...
Listen to Black women. We told y'all, listen to Black women. Black women are the vanguard of a multiracial coalition transforming America. Black women are the soul, the heart, the conscience of the movement, and they need to be included. They need to be at the table if we really want to make change moving forward. They don't just fight for their family, they fight for everybody because they understand the future is at stake. They literally put their heart, their body, their mind on the line, and they are just leaders in that way. They keep that community together. And that's what I saw growing up. And I saw that from my mom. I saw that from my aunt. I saw that all up and down from the women who were very involved in my life as I was growing up. And they were leaders. You see Black women taking leadership roles in every way that you look. And they shouldn't be taken for granted. Not at all. There is a compassion, there's an understanding. It just goes so much deeper for them than I think anybody can understand. And just looking at the history of this country, from slavery to Jim Crow to civil rights movement, there's always been a Black woman part of that transition or part of that fight. You would not have been able to get through those periods of time without having a Black woman there. What we're seeing now, though, is in the resistance, it is being led by women of color. In particular, Black women, Latino women, you see them leading this resistance. And when we vote, it's not just us that's voting. We take our family, we take our kids, we take our partners or whoever is living in the household, and we bring them to the voting booth. And that is the power of Black women.
So that was a great video by our very own Corinne Jean-Pierre from Move On. And we are so excited again to be here to talk about For the Culture, harnessing the power of Black women to transform America, with so many great partners who've come together to show support and to show the importance of talking about how we not only yield power as Black women, but how we exert that power to build more power for our communities. And so this event is sponsored by Move On, by the Collective PAC, Color of Change PAC, Democracy in Action, Higher Heights for America, and Black PAC. Many organizations who a lot of folks say can't ever work together, but clearly we support each other and we're here together. And so we're just really grateful. We know that Essence Fest is a very busy time for many people. So for you all to be here with us, we really appreciate it. And for our audience that's watching online as well, this is a live streamed event. We want to thank everyone for tuning in on a Friday afternoon. We really appreciate it. But we're going to get started with our first conversation, which is really about culture. For the culture, how Black women drive and create culture to create change. So I want to introduce our panelists who are here with us for our first panel discussion. And first is Corinne Jean-Pierre, who is the national spokesperson for Move On. She's also amazing. We worked together on the 2012 Obama campaign. She has a lot of presidential campaign experience, and it's just an all-around dynamite political and policymaker and commentator. So Corinne, thank you for being here. My mentor, sister friend, everything in the world, Donna Brazile, who literally, I don't even know if Donna remembers this. I chased her down the first time we met and said, Donna, please, Donna, please, like Spike Lee did. Please, I just want you to know my name and I want to know your name, like, for real. And Donna Brazile is the truth. She is a native New Orleans, but we know that she is a democratic strategist. She's an organizer. She's a commentator. She is amazing in so many different ways. So thank you. It's an honor to have Donna Brazile here with us this afternoon. She's a legend. And Christy Henderson, who is literally a Renaissance woman. She currently serves as the Senior Director of Influencer Engagement for Color of Change PAC. She is literally traveling across the country every single day talking about the importance of our images in the media as Black people, as people of color. She has an extensive career in entertainment and in being an advocate. She is one of the co-founders of the Women WEEN, which is the Women Entertainment Empowerment Network. You see how I knew that, y'all? But she is just fantastic. And so thank you all to our wonderful panel. We're going to get started with a conversation around culture, because I think one of the things that we've seen is that culture drives change. How are Black women specifically creating and influencing American culture to create real sustainable change in our communities? Yes, and the hashtag is Black Women Power, so please follow along with the conversation.
Good afternoon, everyone. Great question, Steph, and thank you for having me here. I think that Black women create everything, I mean, from culture onward. And when we look at the moment that we're in today, I don't think that it's necessarily what we're creating and how we're creating it. It's the recognition that we're getting from creating it and what that impact looks like. But we do see a shift and a change in today's time. And we continue to see Black women speak up, speak out, and lead. I think that interestingly enough, with the new but not so new wave of technology, we are actually able to see it in real time. And this is everything from TV and news programming to local activations where women are active, even in my world, into the TV and film space. Like, we've definitely seen a huge shift in what content looks like. Content really dictates the narrative and the conversations that are happening, and Black women are doing a lot to lead that.
Thank you, and I want to also thank Stephanie for bringing us together this Friday. And I hope that as we look at the next few months and the next few years and decades of our lives, we will take this day and this conversation as one that we started to change the culture for Black women and indeed women in general. Culture is defined as a set of beliefs, a set of traditions, of values. And I think throughout the last 242 years of American life, Black women have always been on the edge of the culture, but in a very defining way have helped to shape a culture that have not always respected our quote-unquote role and our participation. And while we have failed to acknowledge this, what I call this amazing not just literature, but this amazing span of work that Black women have contributed to, there's no question that Black women have been in the, I don't say this word very well, intersectionality between race and gender. We have been in the vanguards in terms of determining that it was time to step out, to create a new path, as well as if you look at even Black women on the stage. We've also been trailblazers in this arena. So we have been trailblazers, but often invisible when it comes to actually being the ones who've gotten credit for the work that we have done. So I think that we need to understand that in order to change what I believe to be the obstacles that still exist for women and women of color and Black women in particular, we have to be ready to change the culture and change the dynamics of a culture that sometimes keep us literally in a stereotypical box that put us down as not being worthy of public attention. And so if we're able to do that, I think we can not only further the progress of women, but also help to lift up and promote the awesomeness of Black women who are doing things in just so many aspects of life. Earlier today, Shonda Rhimes tweeted me after I tweeted about Teresa, the young sister who climbed the Statue of Liberty.
The base of the Statue of Liberty, yeah.
Now, what she said, Michelle Obama said, when they go low, we rise high.
Yeah.
And she said, I was rising as high as I possibly could go.
Yeah.
She is an immigrant from the Congo.
Yep.
And of course, she's going to be threatened with quote unquote deportation as a result of her activism. We need to rally around her. And we also need to rally around this notion that Harriet Tubman face need to be on the $20 bill and to replace Andrew Racist Jackson. And I can say that because I'm from here and I know all about that history. So understand, culture is a defining set of traditions. And if we are not willing to break that tradition when it oppresses us, when it makes us invisible, when it keeps us back, then culture could set us back. I can get more into detail about how culture defined women all of our lives, because we were defined as mothers, as wives, as homemakers. And when we finally got into the workplace, they said, well, you could do secretarial work. You could do this work, administrative work. But women were not seen as being able to do the same or similar work as men. It took a war for people to recognize that women, too, could do this kind of work. And because of our participation in World War I and some other areas of what I call the labor force, women finally got the right to vote in 1920. We're coming upon the 100th anniversary of the right to vote, 100 years. And y'all think, well, we've done a lot. Hell, we ain't done too much because we're still underrepresented in politics. We're underrepresented in the media, in sports, in academia, in business. I don't even have to tell y'all about the C-suite and why it takes so long for women to even get promoted. So culture as a set of beliefs, a set of traditions. Remember who set those beliefs and set those traditions. So don't be afraid to risk it, to break these barriers, because if we don't break these barriers, we'll never be able to open doors to have our rightful place at the table. And thank you for inviting me. And I am a shit stirrer, a troublemaker, and I enjoy that.
Y'all see Donna has her Wakanda beads on. Did y'all peep that? So she's speaking the truth. Yes, Donna. Karine.
I'm not sure what else there is for me to say. Donald just dropped the mic on us. That was some great history throwing down there, Donna. Thank you so much. And I want to say thank you, Stephanie, as well, for bringing us together. Being partners with you has been amazing. And you are, I consider, we don't talk as much as I'd like to, but I consider you a dear friend. And so you are amazing. And she's a co-founder of Collective PAC. You know, just a, I want to say a bad A, but, you know, just want to make sure you got your due as well. Christy and Donna, Christy talked about something that I wanted to touch on was about the technology and where we are today, and how there is a moment where there's been more of an acknowledgement or a visibility of what Black women, the power of Black women, and the two things that popped to me just looking at the current moment right now, just to bring the cultures together, is like, just a couple months ago, you had Beyonce turn Coachella into like a history of Black Southern culture, and she took that, and then from there, you look at Stacey Abrams, who could potentially be the first Black governor elected in this country. So there's been this moment this year, and I would say the last 2 years, where you've definitely seen visibility and movement in ways that we hadn't seen in a long time. But to Donna's point, there's still a lot more to do. There's a lot of work to do. And we can't forget that, and that's why we need to come together and work together and partner in the way that we are in order to continue the fight. And the thing that when I think about culture and when I think about the political movement, I think back to all social movements that deal with equality. Black women have, if they have not been in the room, they've been in the streets, they've been in the voting booth, and it hasn't been easy. And we really are the vanguard of everything that is good. And so that is something that's how I kind of see all of this and bring the culture together when it comes to Black women.
So I remember a couple of years ago, it may have been right when some of the shows like Hip Hop Atlanta and New York and some of the different shows and Housewives of Atlanta and all the shows came up, and the question about culture really took a turn where it's like, but what kind of culture do we want to promote about Black life? Do we want to show all because many of us love all of those. I know I do. I love every single one of those shows for various reasons. And some folks felt like, we don't want to show kind of behind the curtain of Black life in that kind of way because it doesn't impact the culture positively. There seems to be almost a divide happening within our communities where it's a cultural divide amongst what is appropriate to be shown and what not. I feel like I want to get your perspectives on, is all aspects of Black culture able to be used in a way to create positive change for our communities? And if not, how do we get around making sure that everyone in our community feels like they can be represented who they are, but still also feel powerful enough to create change? Like, just because you're in DC doesn't mean you're the only ones that can create change, right? So just kind of want to get your thoughts on some of that.
So for me, I definitely believe that every other culture has the opportunity and the luxury and liberty of showing their best side and their worst side. I don't know that I'm necessarily an advocate for censoring what's on TV in terms of creating Black content and telling Black stories, which is a hashtag for a color of change, tell Black stories. But I do think education and exposure is critical. And I think that a balanced portrayal of who Black people are and the Black experience is necessary. And so when you have a Love and Hip Hop or a Housewives, I don't think that needs to be the only thing that's on television that portrays communities of color or Black women specifically. But yet again, it requires a lot more than just what's on TV or what's on film to create that change. I think community is one of the important things to that. I think family, I think responsibility for each other. And so there's certain programming that I can watch as a 41-year-old woman that I would not necessarily put my 10-year-old niece in front of to watch. But when we think about change and changing narratives and changing conversations, I do think that it's critically important that we are able to have a full conversation. I do think that there are certain conversations that are supposed to be kept in the house and you don't necessarily air your dirty laundry. But I do support Black content creators creating the content that's most important to them. And from there, like you guys said, there's a lot of work to be done, but the programming is not the teacher, and it's a vehicle for change. And lastly, I'd also say I do think that it's also a shift in the way we think about using content, whether it's TV and film, using voices, using influencers who have strong social media followings. You can't work with everybody, you can't do everything, but you can learn something from everyone. And I think that's important to think about as we consider how we utilize current TV programming and digital content to create conversations about change.
Well, I was sitting here thinking, and I was also laughing to myself because I thought, well, first of all, we have scandal, so Black women can now screw white men on TV, and the white man is the most powerful person in the world. Now, as a little girl growing up here, I never thought I would see that on TV, you know. So Shonda Rhimes and Kerry Washington really did break the box. Okay, see, now somebody's bumper going off because I've said it, okay? I don't know if my grandma Frances from Mississippi, the first descendant of a slave, would have understood that. But in the context of where we are today in the 21st century, the first quarter of this century, yeah, we see Black women in all different types of roles in various mediums. And it's a healthy thing because, look, when I was a little girl, and of course, I'm 29 times 2, y'all do the math. I'm a millennial. Twice over. So think about it. We had Star Trek with Yuruhu. Was that her?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, and everybody wanted to go to space. First of all, to get away from white people. I said it. We are going into space to get away from these white people. These white people taking us in space are nice. You notice Captain Kirk was nice. He wasn't trying to treat us bad. He let this black woman drive. He told her what to do, and she told him what to do. And every now and then when he got all the orders, she went and talked to him. There was a relationship, and it was some kind of equality going on. So we went from her, and then we had to go into this moment where we had the Jeffersons, and then, oh, black people can make money now. Wow. And so we've gotten off our knees in terms of being projected as just housewives and domestic workers to now, like I said, powerful lawyers, murder, how to get away with murder, to being able to sleep with the President of the United States. So, yes, let us have our moment. Let us have black women in all these different roles with all of these different responsibilities. We want to be just like white women. We want to be like Hispanic women. We don't want to be boxed in. Again, this notion that we have to be boxed in. There's one kind of black woman. There's one kind of successful black woman. All black women are poor. All black women are late. No, no, no. So we need to be able to share this rich and very strong tapestry. We are a beautiful community. I mean, hell, you come in my family, you get from fudge ripple to a little cherry and some strawberries, and we got a little vanilla, and everybody used to look, and I got a sister with freckles. And we all got the same mama and daddy. We did the DNA test. So maybe because some of our Irish ancestors in us is coming out. I got that story too. All right, so let us embrace this diversity of who we are, this culture. Let us proclaim that is our strength, that this is how we will survive. But we have to project all of these images. The thing that we have to worry about is if we get typecast, Stephanie. We don't want to get typecast. I want people to know that when you look at black folks, just like when you look at white folks, just like when you look at Hispanic folks, anybody else, we're all folks, is that you see what I call the beauty, the awesomeness of our lives, our history, and the culture that we have brought to this country and indeed the world. And that's why, I have to say this, that's why when Megan was walking down that aisle, y'all know I don't watch nobody's wedding. I've never been married. Why would I celebrate that, okay? I sat there like, and then when I saw her mama with them dreads or whatever, what you call that? I don't know, the twist, and with her ring nose, and when Charles squeezed that hand, I said, look, and I was looking at the queen like, queen, look over here. And it was awesome. And when the choir sang, awesome. That is who we are. We are awesome. And we have to know that who we are, this internal gift that God has given us. Let us share it with the world. Don't let them define us to the point where they make us a nothing and a nobody, because when they do that, then they can dehumanize us. And then they can take our children from us. And they can put them in cages and think that we don't hurt. We hurt because we've been taken away from our parents. We know that history. That's why being who we are is so important.
You hit it on the head, Donna. And so then from that, Corrine, how do we channel all of that to create the change that we need to see in our communities? How do we empower our culture, take that culture to transform our communities?
I just want to say one thing, and I'm going to get to that answer. So one day, a couple years ago, I was watching The Good Wife. And I don't watch much TV. And who was on? It was Donna Brazile. And the reason I bring that up, Donna, is because you were and you are, but in that show, you were seen as the person people had to go to if they wanted to run for president, if they wanted to be on the part of the Democratic Party, and she represented the Democratic Party. And I don't remember the show very well, but the guy who wanted to run for president had to sit down with you. And I thought, wow, that is so powerful, and what a powerful statement that it made, that it took. At the DNC.
Hello. Yeah. So that's fact.
So that's fact. But yeah, the reason I bring that up is it blew me away, because I thought, wow, how smart were the producers and the writers to put you in there, and what it said about who you are and how far you've come along and the representation that you've given us. So I was just wanted, I never told you that, but I wanted to mention that to you. To your question, Stephanie, I think it's doing stuff like this, right? It's continuing to work together. It's continuing to push the narrative of who we are and how it's important. I think technology, social media has certainly given us another platform to have these conversations, to be there, to lift each other up, and to hold ourselves accountable and hold other people accountable. And you know, I think it's important because now there's a spotlight on us, on Black women. People are talking about us on national television and how important our vote is and what we mean to the community. And so we need to continue elevating that conversation. And so it's continuing what we've been doing for a long time, going to the voting booth, being at the table. And it's just not stopping. It's not going to change, but we still have a long ways to go.
So I want to make sure, oh, go ahead, Christy. And as Christy's going to say, we have time for one question from the audience. So if you have a question, please, whoever gets to the mic first.
Tweet. Higher heights is tweet. Y'all tweet.
Black Women Power hashtag, thank you.
Please tweet. I wanted to add to that I think that one of the important things we do in that change and creating that conversation is recognize where we're strongest. And so the work that I do with Color of Change and through the Color of Change PAC based in LA is really pushing for Black writers and writers of color to be in our writers' rooms. And so when we think about the shows that we see ourselves on, or we think about programming, we also have to think about who's creating those narratives and telling those stories. And Color of Change recently, a year and a half ago, did a study, the Writers' Room report. 2/3 of writers are white men. Most of the writers' rooms, 97%, don't have a person of color in the writers' room. And so while we're going through this Black Panther moment of seeing Black content on TV, we want to make sure that we're holding television networks, studios, and our communities accountable for telling Black stories accurately and allowing us to create those Black stories. So I don't want us to get caught up in the moment of seeing Blackness on TV, but we don't see Blackness in C-suites, or we don't see them in the boardroom. And so that's critical as we think about what change looks like. Also getting people to the voting booth, you have to know what role you play and play the hell out of that role to support us. Thank you.
Is there a question from the audience? If not, please, let's give our panel a rounding, what do you say? A round of applause. A rousing round of applause. Oh, we do have one question here. Yes. You can come to the mic, please.
Thank you guys all. I respect, I know two of you guys very well from AM Joy and a lot of the work you do. In today's environment with our current president and everyone's there, what can we do now? Because, you know, I'm not in a political office, I don't plan to run, but what can we do? And I want to do not in the framework of us being reactive and being firefighters. What do we do for fire prevention and prevent this happening again and get him out of office and get us and more of us in office?
Well, I'll start that conversation because the first thing we do is we have to educate ourselves on the issues. We have to amplify the message, and we have to get organized and get people registered to vote. This is an election year, and there's no such thing as an off-year election. Every year is an opportunity to create change by going to the voting booth. Dr. King was famous for a speech in 1957 when he said, "Give us the ballot. Give us a ballot so that we can change the halls of lawmakers, change the hall of legislative suites, change the face of lawmakers." I said, change the halls, change the face. We have that power. We can create the change and the dynamics of change that will alter our lives in our community. Just sitting here over the last couple of days in my beloved hometown, seeing LaToya Cantrell, who I've known for many, many years, handle her business as mayor. I mean, she is so new to the job that I told LaToya, I said, LaToya, You have a communications director, you have a chief of staff, you have an administrator. You don't have to do it all anymore. You got 4 years, spread it out, baby, but she is so eager to create the change, to fix the potholes, to address sewer and water board, to figure out what to do with charity hospitals, to look at how to make sure that we can maintain and bring in more affordable housing. Sitting there listening to her exhausted me. But you know what exhausted me? Sometimes it exhausts me that when people tell me they don't have a reason to vote. You always have a reason to vote. The fact that this great, beloved, historic city has put in office a real community organizer. I'm not saying some people who can proclaim to be community organizers are not. I'm saying she's a real one. She ran against the establishment. She was not on anybody's list. They didn't give her the establishment money. The people propelled her to office. It was a bottom up. So that's what you want to do. You want to create the dynamics of change. You want to get involved. You want to get engaged. You want to stay engaged. And not everybody has to run for office. I've never run for office. Yet I've worked on 7 presidential campaigns. I have to tell myself every now and then, what else did I do in my life? 7 presidential campaigns, 19 state and local campaigns, 56 congressional campaign. When Mary Landrieu, who was a senator here for many, many years, wanted to run statewide, she called me. I was 27 years old. So you have to decide what it is you can do in this public space called politics. But I tell you one thing, just because you take no interest in politics doesn't mean that politics won't take an interest in you. And because your tax dollars, and when I say tax dollars, you buy milk, you pay taxes. You buy gas, you pay taxes. You watching cable, you're paying taxes. You're paying you're paying a lot of taxes. So make sure you know where your tax dollars are going and that they are flowing to your neighborhood and community. So that's why you take an interest in politics. And the reason why Donald Trump is in office is because not enough of us took an interest in 2016. And remember, we were under attack. So many people were confused. There were some people who said, well, I already voted. Hell no, you didn't vote. The election day was November 8th. How did you vote? Well, I got this thing say I voted. No, that's a lie. So, and then some people say, well, they say I could text my vote in. No, you can't. You got this. You know what up. So please take an interest in politics and community engagement. Take an interest whether it's in your church, whether it's your workplace. Take an interest in all aspects of life. I got to tell you one last story. You know what I did earlier this morning? I got myself up, and God knows I couldn't get up as early as I wanted to, because like some of y'all, I did a little bit of partying last night, and I was with my nieces, and I was trying to hang, and okay. All right, but that's okay. I got myself up, and I met with the CEO of one of the largest quote-unquote retailers as a result of coming home for Essence Fest. And while there, I channeled in my inner child, and I'm sitting across from the CEO, and I said, how much do you pay your workers? How are they promoted? What are you doing to put, and I said the word, black women into C-suite positions. What is your gender diversity strategy? What are your metrics? And then he admitted to me, he said, we have not always done so well, and we've fallen behind. But the fact is that I was not in the room just to be smiling and nice. I say, hell no. I am going to ask the question, because when I shop at this quote-unquote retailer, I want those workers to know that Donna Brazil did not go there to have breakfast. In fact, I didn't even have my breakfast. I was eating Stephanie's food back there because I was too busy sharing all my notes. I did my homework and I raised it. I said to myself, he'll never forget meeting Donna Brazil this morning. Hello. If he thought just because he's at Essence Fest with a big booth and a big old this and this and this and this and this and this, that I was going to be happy. No, I want to know, how much are you paying your workers? Hello. How do you promote them? What's the strategy? Okay? Because that's what we do. That's what we do. When God gives us a position of influence, ask this young lady who goes on TV and represent. Ask this young lady who goes on TV and represent. When God gives you a position of influence, God didn't give it just to you. God gave it to you to share it, to use it, to amplify. And that's why when people go after poor people, I say, hell no, I was born at Charity Hospital. You don't talk about poor people like that. Because poor people I know work hard. They work harder than most people. So, ladies and gentlemen, use your power. You have it. Unleash your power. because you can, and amplify those voices that bring about real change. And then you do your Beyonce and Jay-Z and go ape shit, or whatever that damn song is.
So with that, let's please give Donna, Corrine, and Christy a round of applause. Thank you, ladies, so much. So we're going to transition to our next panel discussion, which is about advocacy, which, to get to your point, we're going to talk specifically about how do we create the change we want to see. As we rotate panels, we have a great video that's going to be shown by one of our sponsors tonight, Higher Heights for America. So I want to welcome Glenda Carr, who's going to come and do a video presentation, and I will get to your question for the next panel. So just hold on to it. So Glenda, please join us on stage, and we're going to show a video right after Glenda.
Good afternoon. Again, my name is Glenda Carr. I'm the co-founder of Higher Heights for America, a national organization building the political power from the voting booth to elected office. So excited about joining our partners this afternoon for an important conversation about Black women. So in 1851, Sojourner Truth stood before an assembly of women in Akron, Ohio, and proclaimed a question to the group, and it was, "And ain't I a woman?" 167 years later, Oprah, a couple of weeks ago, when they were unveiling her exhibit at the African American Smithsonian Museum, also walked on stage reciting her speech. How sad, but how amazing is that that speech is relevant in 2018. So Higher Heights has partnered to launch this weekend our hashtag Black Women Vote campaign. And we're asking the question for Black women across this country to tell their truth. That is what Sojourner Truth did in 1851 when she asked that very important question. And we're asking the millions of Black women across this country, as we are moving towards the polls and organizing our communities to vote this cycle, to tell your truth. So if you are here this afternoon, we have a truth teller booth, and we want you to share your truth. What are the issues we care about as Black women? What do you need to sound off about? And so we are excited to unveil a series of videos. We're excited that Move On has allowed us to show this first in a series of videos of Black women telling our truths. And what I love about when Black women tell our truth, sometimes it's uncomfortable conversations, and that's what Sojourner Truth did. She posed a question that was uncomfortable, but it sparks a conversation. So we want Black women to continue to spark a national conversation with the Ain't I a Woman, hashtag Black Women Vote campaign. So thank you.
Well, children, where there is so much racket, there must be something out of kilter.
Sojourner Truth was a truth teller. She spoke truth knowing that it might make people uncomfortable, but that these truths must be spoken.
When I think about what it means to say, ain't I a woman, it is commanding the respect we deserve.
She was challenging them to see her not simply as another woman, but as a Black woman, to acknowledge her Blackness, because it was just as important as her womanhood.
In today's political climate, there has not been full recognition of the contributions of Black women to the building of our democracy.
Our voices are not being included in a real way in the mainstream media movement that has happened. Even the Women's March, it's like, keeping it real, sisters ain't coming out here in pussy hats, okay? Like, we're just not doing it.
Transgender women of color, I think, have a really close relationship with the broader feminist movements, because it's really about who has agency and control over one's own body.
Black women are still carrying women's rights, human rights, equal rights. Really, just as my grandmother used to say, the more things change, the more they stay the same.
Her response to really patriarchy, her response to sexism, and her response to white racism really allows for this movement, Black feminists, to have a foundation that brings us to have the hardest and most courageous conversations.
It's time out for you ignoring us. It's time out for invisibility. It no longer works for us. It didn't work for us then, and it certainly doesn't work for us now.
And those words she spoke were the words of representing all of the women who could not be in that room, but whose voices needed to be heard in that room.
If the first woman God ever made was able to turn the world upside down all alone, these women together ought to be able to turn it back and get it right side up again.
Ain't I a woman?
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 Ain't I a woman? Together ought to be able to turn it back and get it right side up again.
Ain't I a woman?
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 So I want to thank Higher Heights for that fantastic video. And with that, let's bring on our next panel up Glenda Carr, who is the co-founder of Higher Heights for America. Adrian Sharpshire, who is the founder and executive director of Black PAC. And we have Miss Amy Allison, who is the president of Democracy in Color. All amazing women who every single day are creating change across the country. And I just really want to start with the conversation of, why do y'all do what y'all do? Because I know you don't get paid as much as y'all worth doing the work for the community. And so what got you into this space, and what makes you so passionate about specifically creating change on behalf of Black people and communities of color? Glenda?
Well, I'm the great-granddaughter of Carrie Lee Dickens. She was born in 1895 and died shy of her 100th birthday. See, she dreamt a dream for my brothers than we could ever imagine. She dreamt a dream even though she only had a third-grade education, didn't have career opportunities, didn't have a right to vote, but she had a dream that the generations after her would be able to, fulfill everything we wanted. And she worked until the day she died at 100 to ensure that we had those abilities. That is the richness of Black women in our stories, regardless if we don't have access to education, access to career opportunities, access, that we will still advocate and organize in a way that the next generation. So I think for me, I need to continue to pay that forward so that my goddaughters live in a world where they can imagine the possibilities that it can exist for a Black woman in this country.
Thank you. So I think similarly, I think probably many of our stories are similar. I'm, a ninth generation American, and I think that we all come from families of strivers, people who worked hard because they believed that they had the right to all that this country is supposed to offer. And I feel that way too. And so this work for me is ultimately about ensuring that our children, that our children's children have access to the potential of what this country is supposed to be. And I think that that's true not just for us sitting on the stage, but I think that that's true for the women across this country who do this work, who do political work, who do grassroots organizing work, who do advocacy work, who do service provision in their communities, trying to make sure that we have the rights and the access that we believe that we have a birthright to obtain.
Hi. Hi. When I was 16, I cut class to meet a boy in Berkeley, California, and he took me to Marcus Bookstore, which was the first Black-owned bookstore in California. It was the first time that I was exposed to the richness and beauty and history and power of our tradition and place in this country. And when I was there, I discovered about Shirley Chisholm, a woman that I had never heard of, who was the first Democratic woman to run for president. And my possibilities in my own life opened. The vista about who I could be as a black girl, and really helped to shape me as an activist and later as a political consultant, someone who was inspired by Shirley Chisholm's vision. It wasn't just for black people, it was for this country. It was for the poor, it was for the downtrodden. It was a belief that government and movements could shape our destinies. And that's been my guiding light and North Star for my entire career.
So I want to think of how I'm going to word this question. You know when you know people, you can ask them questions that maybe you shouldn't ask on stage? It's more of a like, we getting drinks question, but I'm going to go ahead and go there. So we've all been in this space a really long time doing this work. And I almost feel like in recent years, it has become very popular to be a community organizer, to be an activist, to be an advocate, to be a t-shirt wearer, whatever have you. I want to know why, though, is it so vitally important that in a very real way, we really do organize in our communities right now? Like, what is at stake if we, especially as black women, as black people, don't organize ourselves to be able to exert our power to create the change we need to see?
So I think that our sisters from the previous panel talked some about the moment that we're in. I think that this is, there's just a reality about what's happening right now. That certainly, we've heard people talk about how things aren't new, but this is certainly new to many of us, right? This sort of moment in time where not only is our humanity being questioned and the humanity of other people of color, where our very citizenship is in question. Every time we see a new voter suppression law, every time a returning citizen comes home and doesn't have the right to vote, every time a partisan gerrymandered line is drawn, every time an NFL player kneels and is told that he should leave the country, our citizenship is being questioned. And that can't ever be for us or anyone else in this country. When we see children, Donna mentioned earlier, when we see babies being separated from their mothers, we know that history, that is a path that we cannot go down ever again. And so there are some things at stake that are fundamental and basic to what it means to be striving for a more perfect union. And so I think in this moment, when we talk about the opportunities for people being engaged and why it's necessary and why organizations like ours and organizations across the country are important, is because we need opportunities for people to actually be engaged, to actually come together and express their organized power. And that means everyone. And it doesn't just mean when on election day. When we think about November 6th, is that election day? When we think about November 6th, 2018, that is not the end point. That's actually the next step, and then it begins again the next day, because it's not just about our ability to pull the lever and get someone elected. It's also about our ability to hold whoever we get elected accountable to the issues and the agenda that we know are going to make our community better, that the issues that we know are important to our lives. And black women and black communities in general, but black women specifically, tell us every single day what those issues are and why they matter. And so we have women across this country who are working very hard, not just to stand up and have a t-shirt on, which we all love the t-shirts, but to really think about how are they improving their community, how are they changing lives, and how are they at this point actually saving our democracy from a tyranny of the majority.
And I'd love to hear, ladies, how do we do that? How do we make sure that we are stepping up in a way that's actually creating progress and not pulling us back, but moving us forward? And probably talk a little bit about the work that you all do in your organizations as well.
the image on July 4th of the immigrant woman who's black standing on the base of the Statue of Liberty defending something beautiful, the vision, idea that we have in this country of what a democracy could be if only the country lived up to its ideals. And part of the way that we can do it in Democracy in Color, I know this is the work that we've been doing for a long time, is to recognize that we are the majority. There's something about using the word minority, which is diminutive. It pushes you off to the side. The thing that is happening, and I'm telling everyone in the room and everyone who's watching on the live stream, we have to change the way that we talk about ourselves and our political possibilities. So I'll just share some facts. One thing is that black women are the highest vote turnout voters of any race and gender, and we have been for decades. No Democrat can win without the black women's vote. We are critical. And if you insult our heroes like Congresswoman Maxine Waters, and you ignore our presence, you don't lift up great leaders like Stacey Abrams, who's running for governor of Georgia, you ignore our power at your own detriment. So that's how the country, and I'm not for one party or the other, that's how the country has gotten to this place now. The reason why it's important to understand where the majority is, that it's not just about black women or black people, it's about multiracial progressives. Together, we had the power to elect and re-elect America's first black president. We have the power to pick senators and governors. And we still have that power, despite the fact that Trump is in the White House. We still have the power. And so for us to believe and to understand that the numbers tell us the possibility, it means that we have to, that it's important that we engage fully to not only just show up at the polls, because it's a very dangerous minority who has taken over many state houses, Congress, and the White House. But the majority of people, and we have a heart for people with a different circumstances or different places in life, across race, we can come together. And the way that we can do that is to deeply invest in the Adrian Shropshires of the world, who are our nation's top strategists. Adrian is among some amazing black women and other women of color who know how to win elections by talking to, engaging, registering, and getting people to the polls who are usually ignored by both parties. So if you look at the work that Adrian's organization has done and groups that are in Arizona and Texas and Florida and Georgia, that is the future. That is how we do that. It's not about TV ads. And that doesn't get people to vote. And the thing is, for us to demand of the institutions who are supposed to be supporting a progressive vision, parties and other kinds of donors and organizations, they need to understand that people of color, the new American majority, are the majority of voters. There are more of us than there are of them. And we have the power to win. And that black women are the vanguard. So all they have to do is follow us. Follow us, and they win.
And fund us.
So I absolutely agree with Adrian around 365 days worth of civic engagement. Democracy doesn't begin and end on election day. Black women organize differently than our counterparts, and we have to value that. When you fire up a black woman, she doesn't go to the polls alone. She brings her house, her block, her church, and her sorority, and her water cooler, right? And she informally does that. Black women are the largest users of social media. We spend 3 to 4 hours a day, more than the general population, on social media, and we're influencers, not just the Beyoncés of the world, but literally everyday black women that are like oh, what are you wearing today? And we follow, right? So how do we use that, like, how do we actually unleash the organizing power of Black women? You know, we control over 65% of the money spent in our communities. How do we, as Black women, actually invest in our political engagement? What I'm so hopeful for is the fact that there's a record number of women running in this cycle, and there's a record number of Black women. And that's exciting, but it's also the 24 million Black women in this country are underrepresented and underserved. Our representation on the ballot doesn't match our representation at the polls, right? So we overperform at the polls, but there's no return on investment in our political leadership. So it is about us breaking glass ceilings. You know, out of the country's 242-year history, we've never had a Black woman elected governor in this country, right? And we have an opportunity collectively, not just the Black woman in Georgia, but the Black women across this country, to collectively invest in Black men running, to pick up the phone and make phone calls or text messages and encourage people to vote for qualified candidates. It's not just about electing Black women for Black women's sake. This is the 50th anniversary of Shirley Chisholm's run and election to Congress. And although there has been some gains, there's a lot of work that still needs to be done. And often the national narrative has been about women running for office. So in 2016, many of y'all woke up the day after the election, if you fell asleep before, you know, the nightmare where you go, and everyone was expecting that the headlines the day after the 2016 election cycle was that that America elected the first woman president. That did not happen. The narrative was dominating for weeks. What was not reported from the headlines was we elected the largest number of women serving in Congress, including sending the second Black woman to serve in the U.S. Senate. We elected the largest number of Black women serving in state legislatures. In 2014, we only had one Black woman mayor of a major top 100 city. We now have 7, including here in New Orleans, you know, electing your mayor. So it shows there's been gains, but there's still barriers, which is why Collective PAC and Higher Heights, you know, team up to ensure that our candidates are resourced, right? It is about us collectively building a political stewardship and a political program to invest in the leaders that inspire us. So I would say that the action item and some of the work that Higher Heights is doing is about building a national network of Black women to flex our voting power, flex our voice, and flex our pocketbooks. So, you know, my goal this year was to double my political giving and be more purposeful in the way I politically give. So I am, you know, I've set up monthly plan, like here are my 5 candidates, as Power Rising would talk about, or your 10 candidates, and they could be your local candidates because local, all things are local, or it could be a national candidate that inspires you. Send a check, click through, set up a payment plan, because we move billions of dollars in the economy every year. It's about, you know, building that economic political stewardship to be able to elect leaders that look like us and leaders that we can hold accountable once they're elected.
Stephanie, can I just pick up on one point? So I want to just admit we've been hearing lots about waves lately. And I think that the point that Glenda just made is really important, and that is that the wave for Black women, the wave for Black voters, isn't starting in 2018. It actually started 2 years ago, and it continued last year. So when we talk about the wave, the increase of Black participation, we think that really started during the special elections last year, whether it was South Carolina or whether it was Alabama. It started during the governor's races, whether it was Virginia or New Jersey. It started with the election of Black women mayors, and it continues. We have been engaged and increasing our engagement since people were shocked by what happened in November of 2016. So this wave has already been building for Black communities, and there is no reason why we should expect for it to crest anytime soon. And I think that it's one of the things that's important. I want to just make the note back to your points, Amy, that wave has been built by lots of people on the ground, by lots of organizations on the ground. And I'm going to list off a few people because I think it's important that we understand we often see national organizations, but the work that's being done day in and day out by folks on the ground is important, whether that's INSE UFO at New Georgia Project, whether it's Breonna Brown at the Texas Organizing Project, or Tequila John Johnson and Charlene Oliver at the Equity Alliance in Tennessee, whether it's Afua Ata-Mensah at Community Voices Heard in New York, or Aaron Bird in North Carolina, or LaTondra Sylvester right here in New Orleans. It's important to acknowledge that work, and there are many others certainly that I did not mention, but it's important to acknowledge that work because they have built the wave that will take us into, I think, some pretty amazing results for this year and over the next couple of years.
And let me just, there is not going to be a blue wave without these black women strategists. There's no blue wave without black people, and there's no blue wave without black women. And I think I often say everyone knows who David Plouffe is because he was a strategist advisor to Obama. Everyone knows who they are, but you may not know the names that were just listed. But this group of women and others are hidden figures. They are the secret to us securing a bright, progressive future, and they are absolutely the nation's leading political strategists. They know how to win. And just like in Alabama, black people are at, 24% of the population? Black women, a little over half of that. But to win a state after 25 years of domination from the right wing, and in Georgia, to increase turnout 199,000 at a state that's been losing to Republicans just over 200,000. The political possibilities are amazing. And you should also keep an eye out for what's happening in Florida and what's going on in some other key states. This blue wave that people are talking about will only be because the hidden figures who are the architects on the ground are fully funded. We have really excellent candidates this year, to your point. Those set of candidates need support. They need small dollar donations and volunteer time, and then they need the organizations on the ground. I always say that, in politics, in electoral politics, if you don't work in politics, it's often hard to see, okay, what is this whole ecosystem? How does this work? And to make it really, really simple, and the way that I think about it is, we have to have our courageous leaders in this age. What's going on in the White House and Congress right now, and what they're doing to migrant children right now, and how they're jailing people right now, means that the urgency and the need for courageous leadership is at every level, is so prescient and so important right now that we need to have the capacity to bring the voters that we know we have to the polls so that they can do their job. And I think that the moment for us right now and the urgency for us right now is to understand that we have a special role to play in this country, and that people who are trying to figure out how we get out of the mess that we are currently in, how do we get out of the mess? When I say follow black women, it's not just black amazing candidates, and it's not just follow us or rely on us as voters. It's listen to the strategists and get into formation behind what could be a multiracial future for our country. And so in the era where they're trying to divide us, that a dangerous, racist, totalitarian group has taken over, and looks like with the fight over the Supreme Court is the latest fight, we still have power in this democracy. It's messy, but there's the moment now to assert it and assert it together. So I want people to understand how much I believe in the people in this room and the power of black women to guide and to lead and to provide the expertise in order to show the rest of the country the way.
So unfortunately, Amy has to get ready to leave to catch a flight. I want to express our appreciation, though, for her views. So thank you so much, Amy. Thank you so much, and for your work. We had a young lady here that had a question for the previous panel. I want to make sure that you get an opportunity to ask your question, so please come to the mic. And if there's anyone else that has a question as well, if you can come to this mic. We're going to get 2 questions before we get ready to have closing remarks from our panelists.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Jamela, and my question actually applies to this panel as well. It's funny, myself and a few friends came to Essence Fest for the first time this year, and one of the things that we were talking about is the content at the Essence Fest, and this was something that we decided to come to as one of our first workshops. How do we take these conversations and infuse them into the broader narrative of and be more influential, like with the Essence Fest. Why is this here and not infused into some of the things that are happening? There's like 300,000 people who come out.
No, go ahead, Adrian. You know, I think part of it is about what we consume daily and what we value daily. Like, I remember getting off the plane, the first thing I saw was a couple of ads for Shea Moisture got a hell of a budget for Essence Fest. Cause did y'all see the Shea Moisture ads when you got at the airport? I was like, I mean, I know I use their products and all, but dang, like they had a serious, like they say that, you know, you put your money behind what you value. And I think that we put our time and attention and our eyeballs and what we tweet behind the things that we value. And so many of us do that daily, where we're going on Twitter not to have a conversation about a show, but to talk about the issues that impact our communities. We're going on Instagram to figure out, okay, what's going on with Black Pac and Higher Heights, and how can, not true, we're going to do our social stuff too, because we are well-rounded women. But at the same time, we have to also make sure that as consumers, that we are very much so expressing the things that we want to see. I'm not quite sure how many of us tell Essence often that we want to see more content, not just in their publications, but in their events that focuses on real daily life of Black women and the issues that we deal with in our communities. And so I think some of it is on us to give that pressure to say, hey, we want to see more programming that involves talking about issues that impact our communities, not on the side stage, not as secondary events, because this is in no way related to the Essence Fest. And I will say, for their in their defense, not defense, but y'all know what I mean, they are having this year more programming than I've ever seen around entrepreneurship, around home ownership, around being a boss, not just being a person that likes to have hair products and celebrities tell you stuff that they don't even know what they're talking about. But we have to demand it, and we have to consistently demand it. That's just,
I mean, to answer that question, it's one of the reasons why we've infused a component where we are having a cultural conversation about our political engagement. The Black Women Vote campaign, Tell Your Truth, is the ability to kind of infuse, as you saw in that video, some of our high influencers to just everyday women. We all have stories, regardless of where we live in this country, what our background, what our educational attainment, what our social economic background is. What I love when we convene Black women across this country with our sister-to-sister salon conversations or our Sunday brunches, because y'all, we love to brunch. That we gather and we talk, and when we're in uniquely authentic spaces with Black women where we can have that like sister girl conversation, it is important. And each one of us have the ability to spark a dialogue with our girls. We all were on the on the train on these planes coming down that were full of Black women, right? And with their Black girls trip T-shirts on, that we can create, political girl trips and political conversations, just like, our brothers who have those very strong, hard conversations in barbershops. It's what we can do while we gather, sipping mimosas on our couches, that we can spark the dialogue on and offline, and being able to mirror the cultural conversations that are happening in our social media feeds, in many of the movies we're going to watch this summer. And it needs to be intergenerational, to be able to have that conversation with our teen girls about, I think, they're much more poised in the conversation. Like, I am obsessed with Naomi Wadler, but to hear these young Black women, Black women lead the future, their ability to really articulate what is making them, and it's okay to be angry, right? What is making them angry, and then for them to spark that action. So it's not just being angry and venting, but being able to create real change. And some of that change is just being able for us to tell our truths.
We have another question. And while you're coming to the stage, we've mentioned a few times Stacey Abrams, who's running for governor. She is the Democratic nominee for governor of Georgia. I just want to recognize her team that's here. Adana, if you can just stand. The Stacey Abrams team is here. If you have any questions about her race or want to get involved, please see these young ladies to the side. They can direct you. Yes, ma'am.
Yes. I work for a Black-owned, operated radio station out of Gulfport, Mississippi, which is down the street. And one of the things that we most prize ourselves in is being able to empower our listeners. The question that we keep coming up with, because you see the gray hair, I'm in Donna's class. How do we empower the millennials? How do we get them aroused? And you guys do this, so what's the key?
I'm happy to start. I mean, I think that the reality is that millennials are already empowering themselves. And so there is a way in which I think that we all then need to meet folks where they are. So when we think about, and certainly for us, right, our charge, all of our charge is to build Black political power, to find ways that we are strengthening our political voice and making sure that all of our people are engaged. And I think that what we have seen certainly over, again, this wave has been growing and this wave has been building, and you certainly see that among millennials, for sure, right? Both in terms of their political engagement, but they're also driving the last question and Glenda's answer, they're driving a lot of the cultural content and the narrative and conversation that we all find ourselves in. So there really is a way in which they're not, we need to meet them where they are and allow them the spaces to actually flourish and to step into and to expand. Because for some folks, and I think we often confuse what the actual millennial age range is, right? So these are grown folks, yes. Right? These are grown folks. They are running things already. And we certainly are thinking about the sort of older half of Gen Z, which are my kids' generation, right? The sort of older half of Gen Z. But millennials are grown and they're running things. And so I think we need to recognize the contributions that they that they make, and meet them where they are to be able to broaden out and expand the work that they are doing.
And I think just a couple of practical things. I remember, you all probably remember, maybe a month or so ago, Cardi B had an Instagram post or a post where she talked about taxes. Man, it was real talk. And it got so many people like, oh yeah, like they could relate because this celebrity who they love her music was able to talk about something that was also impacting the lives of so many people and break it down in a way that they could understand. And I think oftentimes we assume, especially with artists or with people who are influencers or influential to millennials, which really influential to all of us, we assume that they have a certain lane. We need to stop assuming that they are only in their lane, and they need to stop acting like they only have one lane. Like, just because you can sing or dance or act or rap, whatever, that don't mean that you can't talk about healthcare, and you can't talk about employment, and you can't talk about the things that happen in your community in a way that's going to get people to be able to move forward. So I say, let's bring those folks in who can talk about stuff in a way that people can understand and break it down. And then two, let's stop talking in ways and in places that are so typical. People, this is so contrary because we're here in a place like this, people probably, millennials ain't gonna go to certain venues for a conversation. But they may go to the movies, or they may go to a restaurant, they're gonna go to a club. Well, let's start having more conversations where folks are, as opposed to expecting them to come to where we are, just some kind of the things that we can do. But thank you. What's the name of your radio station?
WJZD.
WGAZD?
J as in WJ, Z as in zebra, D as in David.
WJZD.
94.5 FM.
WJZD, Gulfport, Mississippi. All right, thank you so much. Do we have one more question we have time for? And I know that we have, I just want to make sure that we've talked so much about the power of Black women. I know for me personally, as a Black woman, I am completely fueled by the Black man that supports me and is proud of me, and is not ashamed of me doing what I do. We have a Black man here, Francis Johnson. I want you just to stand up, please, who is running for Congress in Georgia. He is on the ballot in November. Are there any other elected officials or people who are running for office, especially any Black women who are running for office or thinking about running for office, if you could stand? Okay, we will recruit many of you before you leave today. So I want to give our panelists just one more opportunity to give closing remarks before we get ready to wrap.
So this year, so I have sticky Post-it notes around my house. I'm a little crazy. And one of my affirmations this year is that I'm personally, and I also say this about the Black women that are on my left and to my right, that we are stepping into and receiving our light. That this is absolutely our season to unleash the organizing power of Black women in a way that actually transforms our communities. We do this work because I want to live in an economically stable, healthy, and safe community. And we do that by changing what this democracy looks like. It is about us being actively engaged, even when people aren't engaged with us. It is about changing what the decision-making tables look like. It is about us being Shirley Chisholm unbought and unbossed. So we welcome you to be part of the Higher Heights growing community. We're the political home formed by Black women. If you're thinking about running for office, you can receive some of y'all can receive resources. I'll get to that in a minute, but you can be part of our resource center. We do these webinars where you can sit literally with your hair tied up, sitting on your couch with a coffee and hearing from amazing leaders like a Adrian Shropshire and a Stephanie Brown James, giving you practical tools of how do you prepare to run for office, how do you prepare to be a candidate. And then if you're just like, my best friend and me, I'm not interested in running for office, but I want to be more politically engaged, giving you tools for that. I would invite you to see the amazing slate of candidates that we are supporting this year. Hope they inspire you to be engaged in their candidacy. And then finally, it is what we always will do, regardless if this democracy sometimes does not hear us. We're going to organize ourselves because we need to vote in leaders that have our best interests and vote out leaders that aren't hearing our issues and moving our issues forward. So we're organizing Black women across this country to tell their truths through our Black Women Vote campaign. So visit blackwomenvote.com to be engaged and learn how you can organize your girls. And once we organize our girls, then we bring everybody else along. And when we bring everybody else along, we're going to move this country to higher heights.
So I would just say from that, this is really our time. And it's our time because this is absolutely a moment of transformation in this country. The panel before us and even Amy talked about our always being on the vanguard. And this is a moment of transformation, and then this is a moment where we need to lead, not because we just like to step forward and lead, but because we must. And what that means is certainly supporting elected officials, supporting candidates, holding elected officials accountable to what we know we need them to do. But it also means thinking about how we organize in our own communities, how we support the organizations that are building power in our community, how we join those organizations and give whatever we can in terms of our capacity, our time, our resources to make sure that we are growing political power, to make sure that we are bringing in and holding in as many people as possible to be with us on this journey toward transformation. And certainly for us at Black PAC, that's what we do. It's reaching out, it's engaging folks in the community, it is listening. I think that's part of the problem that happens when we find ourselves during moments of during elections, is that folks really aren't listening to what we're saying. They're not listening to the issues. It's important for us to be able to make sure that we are elevating the issues that are important to our community, that we are outlining them, and that we're also saying what our expectation is for elected officials on the other side of an election. What's our expectation for how they govern on those issues and how they deliver back to our communities? We do that by coming together. And there are organizations, again, across this country that people can participate in and can join or build your own. Start your own conversation, your own salons, and sort of build that up so that our voice this year is as strong and as loud as possible, and that we send the message that we're not just here for November 6th, that we are here for the long haul, that we are not going away, because this is a moment of, sort of moral decline in this country. When we think about the rise in racism that we're seeing, the rise in white supremacy, we're thinking about what we see at the border, all of the challenges that we know are before us. And there are ways for us to intervene in that. And we know what they are. We talked earlier about the Supreme Court, but not just the Supreme Court, the entire federal court system is at stake right now. We know that we have to save the United States Senate, because that's how we throw up a firewall between what we are seeing right now in this country and the direction that we want to head in. So everyone's participation is critical this year. However you can participate, whatever you can give, whether it's your time or it's your money or it's your other kind of capacities. You're a marketing expert. Offer that to an organization that needs to get their message out broader. But there are ways for all of us to participate, and there are plenty of folks out there who need and would accept and would appreciate whatever we all have to offer during this time.
Thank you, Adrienne and Glenda, and I want to thank our partners for this fantastic town hall. Move On, Higher Heights for America, Black PAC, Color of Change PAC, and Democracy in Color, as well as the Collective PAC. Most importantly, I want to thank you all for coming. I know Essence is, man, it's a lot going on for Essence, so thank you all so much. We will work to make sure that this joint is on the main stage one day soon, okay? Definitely before 2020, because Lord knows we needed to be on the main stage for the next presidential election. But thank you all so much for coming in. And just in closing, again, our hashtag, in addition to hashtag Essence Fest, because they need to know that y'all were here during Essence Fest. Black Women Power, Black Women Lead are some of the hashtags. The ladies will be staying. We have a wine reception outside, so please drink this wine that we have, y'all. It's New Orleans, so you can get a plastic cup and take it with you. Please visit Higher Heights, has a booth here in the back corner where they are capturing footage. Collective PAC also has a booth, a video team in the back. We want to be able to collect your stories and your perspectives to highlight your voices. And then just in closing, I want to just highlight that representation matters. It matters not just on TV, but it matters in who makes the decisions for us. 90% of all elected officials in this country are white. 90. 95% of all prosecutors are white. So that means when we're talking about the Trayvon Martins, and when we're talking about the Shonda Blands, and we're talking about so many injustices that happen in our community, who makes the decisions and who says what cases move forward, those things matter. And we've talked about the blue wave. The blue wave means Democrats coming into office en masse this fall, okay? That's what the blue wave means. 82% of all Democratic elected officials are white. So even though we as Black people are the backbone to make sure that these folks get in office and people who need to make decisions to impact how our communities move forward, it's still not representative. The Koch brothers are planning to spend $400 million on this election alone in a non-presidential election year to make sure that people get elected who do not create policies that will benefit communities of color. And guess what's ironic? We've been able to calculate that it will take almost $400 million for us to elect enough Black people to create true representation in our government. How ironic. But yet, we try to raise $400 at an event. You know what I'm saying? Let's keep it real. So Black people, we have to be able to make sure that we are creating our own destinies and we're saving ourselves, y'all, in a real way. So thank y'all for creating the change that you all do every day in your lives, because I know you do. You made a decision to come here, and we're thankful. What Jay-Z say? You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us. You know what I mean? I think that's all. I think I've said everything that needs to be said. Let's continue the conversation over wine in the lobby. Thank you all, and thank those who joined the live stream today for joining us. We appreciate you, and have a great rest of your Essence Fest.